Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum and very warm welcome to all of the attendees, panelists, and our trainer. My name is Rashid Parvez and I am working as Senior Manager Admin and Trainings at A&J DevTech Consultants. A&J DevTech Consultants are in fact local partners for IEEE covering Pakistan. Our trainer is Mr. Alex Leo Yupeng, who is IEEE's Manager Client Services for Asia. And today is the 10th and final session of the series of 10 sessions being scheduled by IEEE for Pakistani researchers. And the topic of today's session is IEEE standards, what, why, and how. And I would like to pass mic to Mr. Alex Liu to start the session. Over to you, Alex.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for joining for the last session for IEEE training for the first half of the year. To be honest, I'm quite surprised to see we still have 90 attendees because the topic for today, I would say, is very specific. And to be honest, not all us, I believe we need to use IEEE standards in our daily basis. From time to time, we may need to refer to it, but definitely not on a daily basis. Nevertheless, thank you so much for joining. But I have to pre-warn you, in case you find today's session a little bit confusing, a little bit different, a little bit, something new, which is totally normal because, as I said, we don't use IEEE standards on a daily basis. It is very different from the journal paper or the conference paper you have been reading. It is definitely very different from the textbooks or the magazine articles that you have been reading. All right, so there is a question, excuse me, on the Q&A. Any funding opportunities, please share. I have no idea why this question is being asked. I'm not sure whether you have studied the topics of today. This question is totally irrelevant of what we are going to discuss. So, and this reminds me one thing, which is the techniques of asking questions. For some of us, you might have attended all the 10 sessions, and you will realize that towards the end of every session, I'm trying my best to answer some of the questions. However, I always face difficulties of answering certain type of question. And these type of questions, which are number one, irrelevancy. We are discussing topic A and the question is about topic B. This is distraction. Number two, which are the questions that they ask in stages. So instead of asking a question in a phrase, they will ask a question in words. They will type out 3 words. Explain this, tell me about that. These kind of questions are too broad, which makes me no way to answer them. So in order for us to be more productive, more efficient, I will only be addressing questions that are relating to IEEE standards for today. And some of us might be wondering, hey, Alex, I have questions on other items. Well, don't worry. Towards the end, I believe Mr. Rashid, as well as myself, will be sharing our emails. So if you have any further questions, send us a proper email, write it, your question in a proper sentence so that we know what you're asking for. Try not to ask in words or vocabularies. I have very limited knowledge on answering those questions. All right, so IEEE standards, that's the topic for today. What are the standards? Well, the official way it says is establish specifications and procedures defined to ensure the reliability of the materials, the products, the methods, or the service people are using every day. Now, this is the official answer. If I may explain in a plain English language, I believe a lot of us here use mobile phones, right? Whether you are using Apple or Android, different brands, maybe Xiaomi, maybe Samsung, I don't know, Google, all the different brands. Let me ask you a simple question. What types of charger do you use? You know, we have a charging cable to charge the electricities to our mobile phones, right? When it's out of battery. What types of chargers do you use? If you have a charging wire next to you, you take a look at the ending of the wire. What shape does it look like? Mine is a very old phone. It's like a trapezium, you know, there's two sides, one edge is longer, the other edge is shorter. Some of my friends are using a newer one, which is a flat type C. And for Apple, it uses a different charger, right? So as you know, the Apple phone, they use a different charger from the Android phone. Why is that? That's my first question. The second question, I'm sure you all have bought things such as, you know, mobile phones or computers, or at home, you have your routers or fridge, or you have your microwave, any electronic or electrical stuff. For all these stuff, it comes with a package, with a box, isn't it? On the box, there is always this description spells out the specifications of this product. For example, I have a microwave. On the box, it says the voltage, the electricity voltage that this microwave can use is from 100 volt to 240 volt. So that's the specification. So my second question is, do you think all the microwaves have the same specification, or different microwaves from different companies, different brands, they have different specifications? The ones, if let's say I'm buying from Pakistan, will it be using the same electricity voltage from the ones that I have bought in Japan, or in United States, or in United Kingdom? Are they the same voltage? Yes or no? Make a guess, right? So these are the two questions. The answer for the first question obviously is different, right? Because mobile phones, Android, and the Apples, they are totally different. You can't use it, the chargers at the same time. You can't interchange the different chargers for different mobile phones. The second one, if I'm buying a microwave in Japan, the voltage is 110 volts. If I'm buying from Japan, it's 110. If I'm buying it from United States, it's 110. If I'm buying from Singapore, it's 220. If I'm buying from UK, it's a different voltage. So different country has different specifications in terms of the voltage for the microwave. And different brands of mobile phones, they use different chargers, different charging cables to charge their own phones. So those are what we call the differences in specification. And why do they have different specification? That's because when the product was designed and manufactured in the beginning, they are referring to different standards. Japan microwaves has to comply with the Japanese standards for electrical appliances. United States microwave have to comply with the US standards for electrical appliances. The same for UK, the same for Singapore, the same for Pakistan. So that's different national standards. Some standards are national, like what I was explaining. Some of the standards are global. For example, it doesn't matter where your mobile phones is being sold. You buy it from Pakistan, you buy it from US, as long as you are buying Apple, iPhone, their charging cables are the same, because Apple is using the same standards for all the products that is selling across the world. right? So that's what standard is. I'm explaining to you in the real life scenarios so that you know what it is. Of course, that's a very, very, very simple illustration. If you are talking about the actual standards that the engineers has to comply, it is actually very complicated. It has all the requirement, all the rules, or even the calculations of all the details, components, the specifications that you have to comply to. And that is what we call a standard document, which I will show you later, and what are inside the standard documents and how to make use of it. Now, I have spent a long time, I believe more than 5 minutes, to just explain to you what is standards. Let me ask you a question. Do you think you will need to use the standards document on a daily basis? How many of us are saying, yes, I need to refer to standard document every day? Anyone? I know for me, it's definitely no, I don't need it. So who will need the standard? Now, imagine you are engineering students who are doing your master's or PhD or your year 4 studies. You are collaborating with your professor and you are working with a real project that is applicable or connected to the industries. For example, you are working together with a company to design a prototype of a new generation charger. You need a new cable, no, not iPhone. Then in that case, you may need to check out, oops, what kind of connecting port do I need to use? Should I invent a new one? The answer is no, because if you use your own charging port, well, none of the phones out there use the same one. Nobody is going to look at your product. It's like you build a house and you're going to design a door that is 3 times big. Well, if you want to use it for your own house, yes, you can do that. But if let's say you bring this huge door out to the market and you tell everyone else, hey, this is my door, please buy the door. Do you think anyone is going to buy it? No, because all the offices, they are using a different standard size. Yours is good, it's big, but it is not the standard size. Nobody will use that. And we have a friend who is asking, yes, like newspaper is standard document. If you are saying newspaper is a standard document, I'm afraid the last 10 minutes, you didn't get any idea of what I was talking about. That's a totally wrong concept. All right. So let's go through it. Why standards are important? They are the building blocks for product development. When you are designing a product, your purpose is to design, obviously, produce, push it to the market, sell the product so that your end users can use the product. It is very different from your laboratory experiment. So what the standards has to do is compatibility. If you remember the case of the door, right? You have a good door, it's a big door, it's a beautiful door, but it's not compatible with any of the buildings. Interconnectivity. Your door is one part of the building. Now imagine you are working in a shopping, your door is designed for a shop. What kind of doors are the best? I would say it's a glass door because you are running a shop, right? If it's a glass door, when the customer walks by, they can see what's inside your shop, what products you are selling. But if your design is a metal door, it's a solid metal, like a military base, which when the customer walks by, they can't see anything. It's like a secret room. Do you think it's useful, it's good as a door for the shop? For me, I will never use those kind of doors. You are blocking your customers away. You are telling your customers, stay away from here. This is a secret base, right? And Standards has to simplify product development because all the others, everybody else is following the standards. Why do you want to waste the time to come up with your own standard, which nobody else is going to use? The whole purpose is time to market has to be fast. It's all about product, it's all about the timing. As standards are globally adopted, they aid with international trade. Imagine you have a factory in Pakistan. The factory is producing doors and you are aiming for, say, US market or Europe market or Chinese market. Then you say, hey, I'm going to come out of my office. I'm going to measure the door size of my neighbor in the next street. Then I will produce a product. Is that the way to do? The answer is no. Your door is not for Pakistan. Your door is for China, for US, for Europe. What you need to do is you need to check out what are the size of the door that the Chinese are using, the Americans are using, the Europeans are using. You need to comply with the standards of your market. So that's very important. Imagine if you go back to the example of the microwave, your factory is producing microwave for Japan, what kind of voltage standards you should use? Can you use Pakistan standard? No, you should use a Japanese standard. You need to produce 110 volts microwaves because that's what the Japanese market standards are, right? Some of the popular standards, one of the most popular standards is the first one, Wi-Fi. A lot of us, in fact, myself, my computer right now is connecting to the internet for this meeting through Wi-Fi. There's no cables. So that IEEE 802.11 is the IEEE standard for wireless communications. All your mobile phones, all your laptops, it doesn't matter what brand it is, it doesn't matter where it's being manufactured, it has to comply with the same standard because it is the international standards for wireless communications. Some of the other ones, like IEEE 43. This is IEEE recommended practice for testing insulation resistance of electric machinery. And this is a widely standard for a lot of testing agencies as well as regulatory government agencies to test the insulation resistance for the products that are on sale in the market. Engineers, they need to use the standards. If you look at what kind of standards are useful for engineers, the most important one is corporate intranet, because as an engineer who is working in the company, they need to know what my company is producing, right? I need to know what products my company is producing. The second most important one is standard. Standards defines what products are being used. Standards defines what requirement, what specification this product has to comply with. Because only if you produce a product that is acceptable to the market, then your product may be successful, may be bought by the customers, right? So for example, I'm using a very old Android phone. Imagine I go to the shops, I bring my phone, I say, hey, look, help me out. My charger the wire is broken. I want to get a new charger. And the shop was saying, hey, Alex, you know, your phone is using a very weird standard. Nobody produced the charging cable using this kind of port. Then I can't get anything. My phone is dead, right? Once the battery is out, the phone is like as dead as a brick because I can't charge it. No wire can connect to it to charge it. Will you ever buy such a phone that uses its own standards for the power charging? I am not, because I'm relying on the one single wire. As long as the wire is broken, my phone is as dead as a brick. That's bad, isn't it? So you make sure your product comply with the standards. So who is in charge of the standards? Of course, IEEE is not the only one. We have an international standards organization, which is ISO. But in IEEE, we have a standard association, IEEE SA. This is a global recognized standards. We have over 1,000 plus active standards, and a lot of standards are under development. We have a lot of individual members and corporate members. So what these are doing is they are defining, for example, wireless network and communications, all these kind of standards. So the type of standards we have, obviously the most important one is the standards document. This is the documents with mandatory requirement, which is compulsory. Second one is recommended practice, which is preferred by IEEE and is actually recommended for practitioners. There are also guides. Guides are similar to recommended practices, but we don't set a preference. It's just guide, provide a good practice or approach of certain product design or implementation or applications. So those three are the most highly recommended one. There's also another trial use document, these are standards for not more than 3 years. As it develops, it may end up as become a standards or recommended practice or guides. The life cycle is like this. Of course, in the beginning, it's like we have to develop a standards. At that time, it's called a draft. And after it's approved, then it becomes an active standards. Sometimes it has to go through some revisions. So that's called active standards and revisions. And of course, when the standard is outdated, is obsolete, it becomes inactive standards. Maybe in the becomes the older version, or sometimes it's withdrawn. So as it develops, first it becomes a draft, second becomes active. Red line refers to the amendment, the revisions. Archived means the old ones, the older versions. Withdrawn means it's withdrawn, it's no longer useful, right? So who can participate in standards? If you are a student, well, you can take a look, but none so far. I don't think we have any students who are participating in this. This is more for the industries, right? So that's why we have corporate member as well as individual member, which are pretty much researchers working in the domains. So that's the theory part. If you are lost, don't worry, it's common. If you are still with me, very good. Let's continue. And what I'm going to do next is I'm going to show you how you can browse the standard and how does the standard document looks like. And that's pretty much it. You may not need to refer to the standard document on a daily basis. And in fact, I don't think any of us would need to do that, but it's good for you to at least take a look at it. You know what a standard document looks like, so that in the future, if let's say you end up working for Intel, for Qualcomm, for Samsung, for Apple, then you know where to look out for standards. And in fact, if you ever work for any of these companies, the first standards you will need to use, you will need to refer to are IEEE standards. All right, just give me 1 minute. I will launch the browser and and I will show you the standard document. All right, allow me to start sharing again. Now, this is the 5.6 million documents from IEEE Explore. As I have explained earlier, we have conference, journals, magazines, books, and we have standards, right? As you can see, we look at the standards, click apply. And of course, out of this document, let's look at the one that is, more relevant to us, 802.11. This is the draft standards for information technology. This is the draft standards. This is the draft standards, draft standards, draft standard. All draft standard. Look at this one. This is not a draft, right? So you may be asking, hey, Alex, how do I know if this is a draft? Well, there are two ways. One way is look at the name. It says IEEE draft standards. And this one says IEEE standards, right? So we'll say this is draft. Well, the second way is you look at this thing here. This is what we call the standard number. As a student, you are in your university, I'm sure you have your student ID, right? You have a student ID. I know my student ID is a number, 8-digit number. Yours may be different, but I'm just using this as an example. If you compare this standard number and this standard number here, you will realize that for draft standard, it starts with the letter P. So this is P802.11 BC. And this is IEEE standard 802.11 BA. That's the difference. Any standard number start with letter P is a draft. Any standard start with a number as a number, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, then 0. Obviously, standard doesn't start with 0. So it's from 1 to 9. Any standard start with a number. This is what we call an active standard, which is the final version. If it's a P, it's a draft. That's it. That's the difference. Right, this is the AZ, this is the draft. As you can see, this is the P again. This is the standard 802.11 AY, right? 802.11. And you look at this, this is a red line. What is a red line? Red line means there are some revisions that are available. So let's look at two standards. The first one is what we call the active standards, 802.11 A1. We open it. And we will be able to read the PDF, right? Click on it. Beyond the standard document are very long. You are not going to read it from the first page to last page. I'm not saying you can't, you can definitely can. But as far as I know, we don't read it from the first page to the last page. You will know why once you have this PDF open, right? I'm going to open another one, which is a red line document for later. So let's look at the first one first. Just give it a minute. This is the document. How many pages are there? 768. Now tell me, are you going to read it from the first page to the last page? I know I am not. But let's look at the table of content. This is the table of content, right? And remember, this is an amendment. This is not the actual 802.11 AY document. This is actually the amendment, which means they add on to the original document, right? So even the amendment has over 700 pages. Now imagine how long the original standard is. Title page, introduction, content. Look at the content. Amendment added on from section 3 onwards because the original standards has section 1, 2. Section 3, definition, acronyms, abbreviations. Section 4, general description. Section 5, max service definition. Starting from section 5 onwards, it goes very technical. Section 6, layer management. For those who are studying computer science and computer and communications, you will know what this is about, right? And it goes by section 6 is quite long. And there's also a section 8, if you look at here, 8.3, frame, fonts, and all that. So what do I mean by very specific, very technical? Let's look at it starting from, let's say, section 6. As you can see, section 6, 6.3, 6.3.3, 0.3.2, 0.2.2. So all these changes are the amendment of the original standards, all the abbreviations, all the definitions. As you can see, for all definitions, there's name, type, valid range, as well as description. This is talking about MAC definitions. And if you go down, right, it goes very technical. And if you go for section, let's say section number 8, since these are the amendments and all the changes, as you can see, these are very technical. This is like your reference book or your dictionaries when you are designing a product. You are not going to read these from page to page. No, you only come here to search for certain informations, especially these kind of technical definitions, because your product has to comply with this. So that's what. Let's look at the red line. Oops, it's still downloading. The red line standard. The red line, what is a red line? Red line refers to, remember in your secondary school, you take the exam. After the exam, your teacher will use, I mean, this is the case for Singapore, right? Our teachers will use a red color pen to mark our mistakes, to mark our papers. And they will put a big cross to indicate, you know, I did this question wrong. The same here, the red line refers to what are the changes, what are the corrections or amendment that is happening. And I think I'm opening a very huge document. That's why it's taking so long to load, but it's coming to an end. Just give it a minute. This is very common for standard documents. That's why, you know, you only refer to it when needed. So these are the red line documents. And if we scroll down, this is this one, abstract. And this is another draft standard as well. And as you can see, this is an approved draft. Approved draft means it's approved. The next step it will happen is they will make this to be so-called official standards, right? So that's all these are revisions. Approved draft, they say it's approved draft. So this is pretty much the standards. Let's just give it a minute. I think this is a very long, huge document. The reason why this file is too big is because it needs to contain both the original standards or the original specifications requirement, and it also needs to include all the corrections that it has made for which section, for which component the correction has been made. Then they will open it. You can read both of them at the same time. Let's give it a while. So in terms of standards, that's for searching. You know, of course, you can also search by using a keyword. Let's say I'm interested in standards in electrical safety, right? You can do a search. And out of all the documents, there are different documents, for example, conference paper, journal paper, and there are standards which are related to electrical safeties. Then you can just look at the standards. So this is a preprint proposal or draft National Electrical Safety and NESC handbook. This is a very important safety code, which is widely used in the United States and some of the other countries for electrical safeties, right? These are the red lines, as you can see. They have red lines as well. So all these are the standards documents. Let's see if this is still loading, but coming to an end. This is about searching. You can also browse the standards. Come to browse and standards. You can browse by a collection. For example, I'm interested in smart grid, you know, power. Power is very important. So you have cybersecurity for smart grid vision, impact of smart grid, and all these are the standards. And as you can see, IEEE standards for secure communication protocol, smart grid research, and all these. These are the standards which are related to smart grid. All right, still loading. Let me I'm going to reload. Reopen the page. This is a big document. it some time. You can also search by the number. For example, 802.11. Right, we can do a search. And what you realize that within 802.11, there are a lot of subcategories because 802.11 is actually a huge category in terms of standards. 802.1, oh, this is 1Q. Why is 1? 802.11, this is the one, right? You see active. We have draft, we have different draft, BC, BD. This is a 802.11 AZ. This is the proved 802.11 BA, AY, all these are proof. We have a red line as well. I believe it's the one we are referring to. And this is the proof AX, approved. And if you scroll down, we have more draft, more approved red lines, and inactive. Inactive refers to the standards that are no longer in use. These are generally the standards were discussed earlier, but it has been surpassed by other versions of the standards. I see I'm opening a file that is too huge. Let me open another one. Okay, this is a red line as well. Let me open this. Red line files usually are very big in size because they have a lot of pages, a lot of comparisons and reflections. So give it some time. While we are waiting for the file to be loaded, is there any questions regarding standards? Please feel free to ask. I really want to show you the red line because this is one of the interesting ways to read the standard document. But unfortunately, the file is too big. So I'm going to open a proof version. I believe it's the AY. Yes, this is the AY. Okay, this should be easier. In terms of standards, that's pretty much what I'd like to share today. Again, if you have a sense of what standard is, or how does a standard file looks like, it's very good. If you are still confused, you're not sure what standard is and why we are doing this, then don't worry, because that's very common. All right, so this is the standard document. This is not the red line. This again is an amendment. So let's go to the tables, instruction tables. I believe this is the same thing I was referring to, right? So all these are the standard documents, the amendment that are done. There is a question is how can we extract the relevant information? Yes, they are quite complex to read. If I ask you another question, you will know how to use them. For example, if I change your question to be how we can extract the relevant information from the dictionary, they seem quite complex to read. I believe you will find the answer. You are not going to read the dictionary, right? Do we have anyone here who is reading dictionary on a daily basis? I know I don't. So how do I read it? I will search for things that I don't know. If there's a word I don't know, I will come to a dictionary to search. The same goes for standards. For example, let me see whether my other documents are open. Ah, yes, red line, finally. Red line shows changes from the previous versions, right? So let's look at the different parts. Part 1, overview, purpose, and all this. For example, let's look at this one. Table 1025, transit bit forming support required with implicit feedback. So for example, I have a question about beamforming support required. I don't know what things I should look out for. Then what you will do is you come to standard, you search for beamforming, right? So you see, you have these forms with individual frame types. 9.3.1.20 talks about beamforming. How about the next one? Oh, sorry. Search. So you go through all these searchings, especially in the table of content, right? So you come to the table of content, you search for beamforming. It's a long document, remember? And you see, this document has over 7,524 pages. This is a dictionary, isn't it? Are you going to read the 7,000 pages? I'm not. So in here, you start searching for beamforming, isn't it? That's how you use it. Right, so beamforming report pool frame format. This looks like the one, page 814. That's how you use a standard. I hope that answers the question. Next one, can somebody or organization come up with their own standards and challenge IEEE standards, or they just name us? Well, I believe I have answered the question in the beginning of my session by using the door example, remember? For some of us, if you can still remember the door story I was telling you, I believe you have the answer. All right. Right, so if you come to the, let me come back to this document. If you scroll down, I was trying to find the red line. Yes, this is the red line. You see, all these are crossed. What does that mean? It means in the original version, the original approved version, there is a section of 9.3.3 management frames, and there's a section 9.3.3.1 terminology of management frames and MMPUDs, PDUs. So that's in the original version, but in the red line version, these two are struck out, which means these two are removed. These are the changes. It's exactly like how our teachers mark our homework or our exam papers, right? All these are the changes as well. As you can see here, there's a part 2, but it's struck out. It's changed to this one, right? The original one is PUB 180-4, it changed to FIPS. And the original citation number is 3, it changed to citation number 4. And you see all the notes number are being changed. So it reflects the changes of different versions of the documents. This is the red line document. And because they are incorporating all these changes, that's why the number of pages is so big, 7,000 pages. The original approved version definitely is much shorter, right? All right, that's my sharings for today. If there's no further question, thank you so much for your time. And we are officially ending the first half of the year's training. In the second half of the year, we may be having less topics, which most likely will be a repeating of the topics we are doing in the first half of the year, but I will still encourage you to attend. And that's pretty much what I have for today. All right, I'm going to pass the mic to Mr. Rashid, and if you have further questions, please feel free to use the Q&A to ask as well.
Thank you very much, Alex.
Thank you.
There is a question. Alex, there is a question. What are other organizations other than IEEE? I don't get it.
Very good question. Have you tried to search in Google for standards organizations? I would recommend you, the first thing to check out is Wikipedia. You just search for standards organization. First of all, you need to know what is a standard organization, right? And secondly, you will find a list of technical standard organizations, and they will explain to you what kind of standards they are, what kind of, what subjects they are looking at. And their answer, I believe, is much more details than you get what you get from me.
Okay, there's no more questions, Alex, and there are messages for the appreciation. You have done a very great job, Alex. On behalf of the whole Pakistan, I would like to thank you at the end of this series. Today was the 10th and final session of our series for the first half of the year. These were started from the February and ended in the June. So we hope that we will launch another series of session in the second part of the year. And me and Alex will coordinate on this, and then when the things will finalized, everything will be shared with you. And we would like to welcome you again in another series of session. So Alex, there are few questions. There's one question: how can we select from alternate standards organizations?
That's an interesting one. This again, I mean, I'm not blaming anyone, but as I was saying, this is a very good question. Number one, you have to ask yourself, what kind of standards are you referring to? There are standards for telecommunications, there are standards for electrical vehicles, there are standards for green buildings, there are standards for workplace safety. What exactly standards are you looking at? And if I may ask you one question, what alternative standard organization are you referring to? Do you know what you need? You have to know what you need first. As I was explaining to you just now, I was actually giving a very unfriendly answer. What do I mean by unfriendly? I was suggesting the user, why don't you search Google? Now, some of us might be thinking, hey, Alex, that's very, arrogant and it's not friendly. I can do Google, why do I need you? No, don't get me wrong. What I'm suggesting is you need to build up your foundation, your fundamental knowledge first. Then from your foundation of knowledge, then you look at yourself. What kind of standards do you need? Then from there, you will know what other alternative standards organizations that provides such standards. Then it comes your question, how can you select? So what you are asking is like 4 steps ahead. And you may not even know the answer for the first 3 steps. Unfortunately, I don't either, right? Number one, you need to understand what is standard organization. Number two, you find out what other standard organizations are available and what standards do they provide. Number three, ask yourself, what kind of standards are you looking for? Are you looking for the standard of the door size? Are you looking for the standards of the microwave voltage? What kind of standards are you looking for? Then number four, how can you select? The first 3, you have to find out yourself. Then you come back to me, you ask the 4th question. And believe me, if you have found your answer for the first 3 questions, you don't need me to tell you how to select, because by then you can do it yourself, right? So that is how I'm going to answer that question. How can you select from alternative standard organizations? The answer lies within your questions. I hope I answered the question in a friendly way. I'm just, smiling and having a chit chat. But to be honest, that's the way how engineers solve the problems. We need to understand the need, the actual problem, before we provide a solution. There's a question, why standards documents are paid? Very good question again. Because they are regulations. That's a simple answer. The longer answer is it takes a humongous manpower and resources to develop, define, negotiate, as well as balance out the standards. then the standard development are being developed.
Okay, there are a few questions regarding the recording link and certificates. So the recording link of this session will be sent to you within 1 to 2 days, probably tomorrow, the day after tomorrow. You will be having the recording link of this session. And as far as certificates are concerned, we will send you the certificates within 7 to 10 days. Okay, and there is a question that how would we know the information of the upcoming standards? Like this time you are having the information. The next time will also be, we will be sending emails to you, your librarians, digital library representatives, or directly to you, so you can join the next series as well. Okay. So, Alex, thank you very much once again.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
And thank you very much all the participants who have joined today's session. So stay safe. Thank you very much. I am going to wrap up this session. I'm going to click the end button. So thank you very much. We'll see you again soon. Thank you, Alex. Thank you, everyone.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Allah Hafiz.